All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. Uh, my name is Jeremy Litwinowitz, and I will be leading the call today. We do not have any pre-submitted questions, so um, for all one of you that are here right now, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat for the Q&A, and I'll be happy to help, and we can take a look at some things. All right, we do have a question, so we'll get started with that. We did have someone else join as well. Just as a reminder, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat or the Q&A, and I'd be happy to discuss them. But we do have a question from Leia. Is there a way to disperse assignments, for example, based on a list that was the output of a truth table? So I'll give you the opportunity to talk if you want to expand on this at all a little bit, and then we can take a look.
Yeah, sure. So in our case, we're trying to use for each step to assign a referral to a clinician. We're not using assignments necessarily like Decisions does. We're just outputting a list at the end of referrals that were assigned to clinicians. So in the truth table, there could be multiple clinicians that could do the same type of work or the same type of referral. So, they would have multiple matches in the truth table. Truth table would output a list.
Mhm.
For each referral, we're trying to find a way to maybe load balance who the referral is assigned to. Like I said, we're not using assignments like Decisions assignments, but we're just outputting at the very end. So basically, if we have a bunch of referrals and we need to assign them out to clinicians and all the conditions are the same, we don't want them to all go to one person necessarily, like the first out on the list to be outputted or.
Okay. Let me just create some stuff real quick. Okay, sorry. So you got some kind of list. You're outputting like all of the people. This is a list of all the people that your truth table grabbed, right? And confirmed needed it. And then from there, you said you want to give each of these people like an assignment or
Yeah,
you're
maybe
trying
give
to,
each of them an assignment or kind of like round robin and disperse the referrals that match on that particular person. Like I said, it's coming through as a for each step. So each
Mhm.
referral is hitting the truth table. So we just don't want to assign all of the referrals to the first match or whatever on the truth table. We want to just round robin it or disperse them.
Okay, got it. Um, so I do have, I guess the one thing I can kind of, I guess I can showcase. It'd be more like trying to build it out. We have this is one of our older training projects. We don't use it as much anymore, but we actually created um, oops, we created this. Um, oh, I'm not plugged in. I was like, what? Okay, sorry. We don't. It's kind of a um, maybe not super efficient progress process because it's designed to be inefficient, because the whole purpose of this project is to fix inefficiencies. Um, but a lot of the elements of it is maybe you might find useful here. Um, but basically, we created our own data structure called round robin tracking, where we kind of and the goal of this is to track how many assignments someone has, and using like loops and taking in like the assignments. This is from the accounts in decisions basically, and it gets a bunch of accounts in the group. It checks and sees how many assignments they have, so you can kind of set a limit on your own if you have some kind of like limit, and then it'll check and say how many assignments do the people uh, uh, in this group have. If they have
Mhm.
any assignments, then we're going to run a rule that's going to check what that assignment like count is and say if it has this assignment, send it to them, and then just add one to their count of assignments and then give it to them. If they aren't at the maximum amount of assignments, then go ahead and just, or if they like have no assignments at all yet, go ahead and create a new one for them. So start tracking them again so that they can have the assignments. And then if it goes and it checks and says that like everyone has the same amount of assignments, it'll just send it to someone and kind of apply it there. But it's kind of like a process that we've built out, so you can kind of decide who gets the assignments. So if you need to send it to everyone, then I think just a simple for each on that would work. If you need to, only send it to certain people, then you can kind of track the accounts, or build something like this where we have our own um like a count tracker. So then it says, okay, with this count, add check and see what the count is. If it's 0, then just set it to 0. If it does exist, figure out what that is, and then we just make sure that we don't send it to whoever has the most amount of things. I guess that's kind of like you can use, and there's also um, like random name generators and random number generators and things like that. If
Mhm.
you need to like get a random number, if you want to make it more randomized or anything like that. And you can, set limits to these as well. Get random integer with minimum, maximum. So there's a couple ways from that, but I think it would be more like, if I'm understanding what you're looking at here, kind of like building out a process, maybe just like a simple data structure to hold the counts there for yourself to like keep
Mhm.
track of those numbers, and then change those numbers as people get assigned different things, and then that way you can kind of prevent some people from constantly getting it every single time if maybe they've received a bunch of a large number of them or something like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, do you have this project? Is this shareable?
Yeah, I can send this project. This is actually the way that we do this particular training project is we actually give you this whole project, and then the whole purpose is to clean it up. But
Mm.
I can send you the project for sure.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
If you don't mind, just put your email in the chat for me, and I can make sure that I have that as well, just so that I know I have the right email to send it to.
I'll send it out for you, Jamie. I'll
Oh,
send it
thank
out
you,
right
Robert.
now. I also put in the chat, and it's a much smaller iteration of it, but if you wanted to look at it, it's the getting a random data analyst in document routing, where you just get an integer, you fetch the account, you get an integer, and you apply it that way. Might be a quick, like, it depends on how built out they want it, but it's an option as well. I sent it to you, Jeremy.
Yeah. So maybe just another little example. Getting the accounts in a certain group, getting a random integer that's basically from that list of accounts, and then using that integer to grab this is like a get item by index, a get item by index step. So then using the random integer that we grabbed to get someone from that previous list, and then removing it from the list temporarily, and then getting another random integer, and then getting a second account. So then it outputs basically two accounts that it grabbed with these random integers. So then you can take, you can take your list and then just grab an account based on a random integer with that item index. And then remove is just a temporary, like this will only happen while this is in, while this particular flow is running, but it'll temporarily remove the account from the original list, output a new list, and you could use that to get another random integer, grab another random person from that list, and output that. So then that's a pretty good way. You can also kind of, but maybe a little bit less complex. This one's more just kind of randomly assigning as opposed to randomly assigning and checking to make sure that, people don't constantly get, bombarded with them. Because theoretically, the way this is built, it could go to the same two people every single time.
Yeah, right. That makes sense. Yeah, I think this one might be helpful too. Maybe I could do some sort of combination.
All right. Let's move on to the next question then that we have for now. All right. Next question we have. I have 3 different data sources that I need to combine for one report. The fields aren't labeled the same, but they should be the same data types. And some fields I need just don't exist on the other table. All right. Alexander, I'm going to give you the opportunity to speak. I think I understand your question, but I'd like you to just elaborate a little bit if you have any more info on what you're looking for here.
Sure. So basically, I'm making a report, and the data sources are kind of spread between different tables. And I need to almost do like a union, but I was wondering, like, does Decision have any special tool or something just to make it easier? Also, some of the fields that I'm going to add in don't exist in the other tables. I'm assuming that when we do this, they'll probably all have to be null or they don't match. But, if you have any tidbits or opinions or helpful tips.
Yes, we do actually have here. It's been a while since I've done this. I might just have to refresh my memory while I look at it. You can create relationships. Here we go. Under database integration, you can add a relationship. And give it a
These
name.
tables are also unrelated, I should say, like in any way.
Oh, okay. Are all 3 of them things that you've created, or are they coming from something else?
I've created them.
Okay. Might be.
Yep. There's no like foreign key or anything or that matches them up.
Right. Let's see here. I had a good example of this. I can't remember if I still have it.
Yeah, I know it's a weird request because normally data, when you're combining it, deals with each other in some kind of way, but in this one, they don't have any relationship at all. And I just need them to kind of be in the same fields where they're similar, and then the ones where they're not, I just need to be an extra field in this report.
Right. Why not have it anymore? I think you'd have to kind of create some way to connect them if you want them all to be on the same report. Right, because the key here is, right, when you add a data source, right, let's say you create something, I throw my account data source into here. right? If you want to add more data sources, it becomes like more limited. So you have only like certain elements, um, that you can connect things with. If you have a way to connect them like with a relationship or something, like I was mentioning, if you add a relationship by going to your create data types and you add relationships to something, uh, you can do it that way, and it provides like a connector. And when you have a relationship between things, like I had this like flow step one from a previous example. At some point in time, I think I probably deleted it. But basically, that will then, when you're looking at your data sources, you'll actually see your items that have a relationship appearing here. If it's like that important, you may be able to just add like a fields that for the most part you're not using or you're hiding, just to be able to connect them if you need to. If you like really need to add those kind of connections. Because I assume because you want like all of these items to fit like on one report, or is there a
That is
problem with
correct.
having like multiple reports next to each other?
Well, the thing is, I don't want to have a bunch of fields in this scenario, and I'm hoping
Mhm.
to there's a couple of fields that could probably union together that might not be named the exact same thing, like maybe like a quotes field, quote name, and I don't know, credit name. Those could like be union together because they're both strings and they both are just the name of the record
Mhm.
where the data is being kept. And so I was hoping to just do a lot of unions with the data.
Right.
And I mean, I can
Yeah.
add dummy fields as well if they need to all have the same amount before I do a union. Also, if decisions has union functionality.
Yeah, I believe. Well, one second. I'm trying to grab something here. Okay. So yeah, I think it might not quite look like we have one, like you can easily, I know you can definitely very easily do it without having to do too much manipulation if you're okay with having things like this where you'd have reports next to each other. Because you can make it based on like a selection, or based on, if I'm selected one here, it'll show a second report based on this selection, and it's connecting two different data structures together when I do that. That's one of the ways that we use in our training projects to kind of demonstrate this. And so if I click on this, it'll show fields that are tied to this particular record. But again, that's like record specific, and like connecting these items. If you wanted to actually connect directly through like one report and have those items displayed, basically you would need um, like some kind of you can add like extensions to this. So like here in this travel request, I'm using assignments, so I can actually add assignment data source to this, and it like provides these items, and you can add those to this. Like I mentioned, one of the ways is through this like ability to add relationships, um, which is like one way to kind of on the decision side with this is with like an external database. connection and stuff like that. If you're utilizing that in some way, you can kind of add that from here. The other way that you might be able to play with this is if you go to it's
Is it
under
also
lookup. Oh, go ahead.
sorry, I was curious, is it also possible to create a flow that maybe accesses these three data sets and then I just match up and do like maybe a join list or something and kind of just match up where I actually need the I just kind of match them up right in the flow by
Say that
field
one more time,
names.
sorry.
Is there a way to like I can just pull in all three data sources into a flow and then match them up by respective field names to add them together? Like because I want the report to go tall, not wide.
Right. Yes. I guess if you want to like report on all of these things separately, um, this may help if you're trying to like all connect them to one report. Just like pulling from them, you can definitely just grab from them right in a flow and like use information from the flow. That doesn't really affect anything. But to utilize something to like populate in a report with all of those fields and stuff, um, you would need to, create something that can like capture everything from all of them. Data extensions is one. This may kind of like reach what you're looking for here, because if you add a data extension, you can kind of um, build this flow to create other items and like further extend what this is. It basically, so the idea is it takes in a type and it outputs like extra things, like what it says up here, right? Takes in a single type and it can output extra variables that should show up under that type. You may be able to toy with that. Let me get a documentation link for this. Um, and I can put it there. You can kind of take a look at that and see if that'll meet what you're looking for. Um, uh, for that kind of case here. If you're looking for like connecting these, another possible way that I've seen some people do, and I don't know if it's always the most recommended, but if you go like create your own data structure, you can connect other data structures to it. Like right when you're creating a data structure, you have your other data structures here. So I can add my travel request, like oops, I can't spell, sorry. Um, right, like I have my travel request data structure, and then maybe I have my I-9 application data structure from a different project, or my financial lending application, right? There's like a bunch of things, asset financial tagging, whatever. Like you're building a structure, and then you have a number of your other structures that you want to use here, right? Uh, then you can kind of like connect things. Yeah, otherwise I don't think it's not like clear and concise, I guess. You'd have to kind of toy with adding or considering these things, like kind of you saying like maybe like manually on the database side or something like that, and then pulling from those databases, if that makes sense. Because I don't think like naturally, I don't think decisions has exactly what you're looking for.
Okay. I appreciate that. I'll try some of these solutions.
Here is your data extensions document. You can take a look at that from documentation. I don't know if that's quite going to give what you're looking for, but it's at least something different to take a look at as well. Maybe worth investigating a little bit.
So just to double check, just out of the box, decisions doesn't come in like a union step. Like,
Correct.
okay, gotcha. All right, I'll find a workaround.
All right. We have a question from Jeff. Curious on the status of project migration from decisions version 8 to version 9. When I was there for Submerse in May, it was still a work in progress. Should I upgrade now? Welcome, Jeff. Robert is gonna take your question because he's pretty good with
Yeah.
this kind of stuff.
Hey Jeff, my name's Robert. Yeah, I've been working a lot with the V8 and V9 migration documentation and training materials for it. I can answer pretty much any question. Jeremy, if you don't mind, I'll screen share if you let me. Cool. And again, I'll unmute you in case I think your question is fairly concise, but I'll just in case you want to elaborate, I'll go ahead and give you the unmute. Oh, you're allowed to be. Cool. Let me share my screen if I'm not already.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, it was
Yeah, so um yeah, it's the migration from V8 to V9 is fairly seamless. I will say it depends on how uh uh correlated all of your projects are to each other. There are some best practices that I would recommend before doing an upgrade. And the most important one is just kind of getting rid of circular dependencies. So what do I mean by that is that in previous iterations, version 8 and below, you might have a handful of projects like Project A, Project B, and Project C. And if you have dependencies that go like this, where Project A and Project C depend on each other, and Project C depends on Project B, and then the inverse of this, and all of this stuff, um, it's not going to be an extremely seamless process for the upgrade, just because in version 9, dependencies are only going to be like a one-way kind of street. So if you have something like this, I would say ahead of time, go ahead and make, rather than having project A, B, and C that all share a ton of materials, make a third common project called D that, or you could call it, shared or, reused materials, because you can, once you go one way, you're not going to be able to go the opposite way. So you could do something along these lines where everything is pointing at your common themed D, and they all depend on that, and they're all their own standalone project. When you update from version 8 to version 9, by default, your projects are going to be in this folder structure rather than a project, just because the paradigm for projects has changed. But I actually think I have a process halfway through. Let me see if I can find it here. Try.decision.com/v8 to v9 maybe. Yeah, I think this will work. Let me go back up here. Maybe not. Maybe I'm not up, or maybe I'm not live just yet. And if not, I'll show you on my local version, but okay. So by default, I have this like imported legacy project here. If you update from version 8 to version 9, all of your projects will show up on this folder tree. Whereas your projects over here are like, it's just a totally different paradigm in which the way decisions views them. When you import your projects, if you wanted to get them into an actual project, you basically have two options. You can create a project and then move this into a version 9 project, and it will create kind of the architecture around that. Or for a lot of your projects, you'll be given the option to, under projects, there'll be a button that says convert legacy project to version 9. And that will do a similar process. A thing to keep in mind about this, though, is that the name is immutable once you create the project in version 9. So if you wanted to change the name of a project for any reason, this would be the good time to do so. But you do want to work around kind of getting some of those dependencies resolved if you do have circular dependencies. So as an example, I have this Greg's purchase request project. I'm going to remove any dependencies I might have. Okay, cool. I can say, okay, with Greg's purchase request project, I can add this dependency of Travel Splash if I want to utilize stuff from this project into this project. But notice how once I add this, if I go to that Travel Splash project and I go to dependencies, Greg's doesn't show up because it depends on it. It depends on it. So you can't go in both directions. This circular concept is kind of we're phasing away from that just so that projects can be their own sealed units and you're not go when you're going through dev to prod and all those different stages in which you might go to deploy an application. You don't have the kind of floating elements in the ether that you may forget, or you make a change in one part and it messes with project B, which then messes with project C, which then messes with project D, which then messes with project A, and it's this huge rat's nest of untangling. I think eventually we'd kind of like to remove ourselves from that. But the version 8 to version 9 project migration, as long as you do not have extreme circular dependencies, is fairly straightforward. On our YouTube channel, I have made a couple videos about that somewhat recently. Here's one, decisions V9 compared to V8 and earlier, and this is me talking about what I was just showing you. And again, this thumbnail is kind of ugly, but basically, the image on the left, that the thumbnail's not going to load while I'm on Zoom, or the video's not, but all that circular dependencies on the left is kind of gone away, whereas on the right now we have these as kind of sealed units. So as long as you don't have extreme circular dependencies, the process is very straightforward. It's either just making a project and moving it in, or converting it from a legacy project to a version 9. And on YouTube, I have another video as well that I've made somewhat recently on the kind of overall run of that. So let's see, that was dependencies V9 to V8 and earlier, as well as project conversion, V8 to V9 decisions. This video kind of talks about all of those processes and the pros and cons of each one, which really the major con is just that name is immutable. That if you have a project and you convert it from a legacy project, whatever that project name is, that's going to be the project name until we come out with some version where you can change the project name, which we don't have just yet. But that is, these two videos are on YouTube, and they're like, maybe 20 minutes between the two of them. But it talks about kind of the major catches you might run into. But the project is fairly seamless if you don't have extreme circular dependencies, if you've already kind of architected your projects to be standalone units or that kind of work in in a solo capacity with just a singular project, it's going to be very, very seamless. It's just when you have these big, ecosystems, um, I'll see if I can pull up the slideshow real fast. V8 to V9. Yes, found it. Here we go. It's really just going to be if you're living in this world, the V8 and V9 and earlier, where everything is kind of circularly depending on things go back and forth and left and right. This is going to be a bit of a holdup. Whereas again, in version 9, all these are standalone. But notice how in this little tiny graphic here, if A is used in B, B cannot be used in A. It is just a singular. The dependencies are singular in their direction. These are some of the kind of the best practices, or making sure you're organizing and naming things. If you have stuff that's just floating in the ether, make sure you attach it to an actual project, resolve some circular dependencies, and make sure everything's attached to a project. But it is fairly seamless.
Okay.
Hopefully that answered.
Yeah, this was great.
Yeah.
So we kind of have the opposite. Well, I don't know if it's opposite, but so our scenario is we only have one project.
Oh yeah, you'll be great.
It's got about 6,000 plus resources in it. So I was
Yeah.
actually thinking about, as part of the V9 migration, like we do have one folder in that big project that's called common that has common elements. And I was thinking about maybe breaking that into a separate project. So,
yeah, if you wanted to, that'd be both of those options would be great. If you just have one big project that has 6,000 elements, when you migrate it over, it should work exactly the same. There are some steps that were changed in the version 8 to version 9, but it's nothing extreme. Also, another convenient part of the version 9 is that when you do choose to import a new project, let's see if let me use my V8 to V9 one. A cool thing about it is that on your project hub, it will tell you outright on your project hub what issues you might have. There's a big validation kind of consolidation here, and you could say, oh, this step name has moved. And really, that's only going to apply to in version 8 if you were using it calling internal services in some capacity. We've consolidated those all down to one step. So in previous iterations, I don't think I have anything in this project actually.
Well, I remember this from Submerse. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so it's just basically some of these steps, and I'll show you kind of the library of them right now. These internal services, sorry, integration internal. We used to have like a zillion folder tree parent crumb type things under here, whereas now it's all under one step. And then that service name, we had all of these previously as folders and then drop downs beneath it. So if you're using something like group service or file reference service, you'd have to go here and then utilize it in this capacity. And I'm not sure, maybe if you had it in a previous iteration, you update, maybe those things are still there, but it is just something to be aware of, that we're also kind of consolidating that huge library down into one singular step for any of the integration / internal services steps. So that'd be like file reference, group services, file data, stuff along those lines, assignments, I believe, as well.
So one more question for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
As far as my statement about like maybe moving our common folder out of our big massive project into a separate project that can be managed separately, would you recommend doing something before migration with that or after migration?
Let me think. So I'll let maybe Jeremy or somebody else fill in the gaps, but my personal opinion, something that it's a common adage, and apologies for being whatever, but like if it ain't broke, don't fix it is my general methodology with most things. If things are working, I wouldn't break it ahead of time and then try and fit, I would, if you have everything in one common project and that's the methodology and workflow that you're used to, I personally would stick with that. But
Okay.
if you wanted to break it out into a common element, I don't see a con on either side, except for the fact that if you do it, let me think, if you do it, no, I really can't think of one. Yeah, if you do decide to make a common project, it would still be a pretty seamless process because you just have to do one singular dependency. Project A depends on, common entities, common workflow items, and it would be a singular one. But I wouldn't break something unless that's something that you wanted to make more robust in the future and you're kind of future planning, like, hey, this is going to get a lot more scaled out and we don't want this to be as much of a clutter bomb. But I don't think either one has steep downsides that I can really think of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the only upside of breaking that common folder out into a separate project is just some of the repository functions
Probably
on large resource sets can be slow. But even that's gotten a lot better, over the last 8 years. Like things that used to take an hour and a half to do, now take about a minute and a half. So
yeah, and I know that version 9 has quite a bit. I'm going to look it up really quick here. There's all kinds of charts on here about performance, but there's a lot of steps that like running clusters and things like that, running flows for lists that has increased performance with version 9 by a significant margin,
okay.
But I would say that, yeah, if you have all your stuff in one project, when you update from version 8 to version 9, it will all show up right here in your folder as its current iteration, and you can still run your flows and do all of those things. But if you wanted the ability to like add new flows and add new reports, you would right click on your project. Again, I have way too many tabs open. You would right click on your project and either move it into a version 9 project, or under projects, you'd get the option for legacy projects. Another consideration, just because it just popped in my head, is that do you guys use a lot of dashboards and public non-decisions user-facing data? Like someone can just access the data without a decisions account?
No.
Okay. Well, yeah. So then you won't run into too much problems. But just a thing to be aware of is that the there's in version 8 and version 9, you could click and create a normal folder to store a dashboard or to store data. Whereas in version 9, that option is only here available in public folder. So you'd have to move your dashboards into a public folder if you did something like that. It would just be from down here and able to adjust permissions and able to get it to be seen by people that may not have a decisions login. You'd have to move it to the public folder. But if you're not using that much functionality in that, even that won't be too much of a hang up for you.
Okay. Cool. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem, man. Glad to get one.
All right. Well, unless we have any other questions, Alexander, I see you're still in the call. I will point out, I did find what I was trying to look for with you when I was trying to answer your question. And again, the functionality that I was thinking of only fixes your problem. Doesn't fix your problem. It only addresses displaying information like wide, but it adds more fields that you could add. Not necessarily adding the functionality that you're looking for, where you just want to have everything in your report. So like I was able to I just created a quick relationship, and you'll see if I create a relationship under data sources, I get an add related table here. So if I add my first data source, I can add a related table if I added some secondary item here. And then you'll see I have all the fields from my first data source, and then I have the fields from the related table. But again, this is only going to be wide. So then I can add, more fields that will be displayed on my report going across to fit this particular case. But again, not necessarily the other way around. So yeah, in decisions, we do have the ability to connect things and add more columns to your reports, but not necessarily rows. So again, if you want to mess with that relationship concept, you can. That's simply where I was looking at before under database add relationship. If you give it a name, you can make that connection just a local connection, and you can add the two database tables that you want to be connected. So then you can provide that connection from here, find your two database tables, and then add that relationship. But again, yeah, that will only go adding more columns to your report based on those things.
Okay, if I want to just write a SQL statement to do it, where could I write the SQL statement and then pull it into a flow?
There are like raw query steps that you can actually write. Just raw SQL step where you can simply just put a SQL command and it'll run that. When the flow runs, it'll just run that command for you.
Oh, that's nice. That's the good. I didn't know that step existed. Does it does it need to still connect to the start as well?
Yeah. So your start step will go into it. Once it hits this step, it'll run whatever SQL commands you have written here, and then continue from there.
Because do I need to tell it what database I'm using, or can I reference it in my SQL statement instead?
I know you have your connection settings, so you have your current connection. If you may have to configure it here. I don't have a ton of experience with doing anything not using the current connection, so I'm not 100% sure if you can just change the database on the command or not. That'll take some testing, because I've personally never tried doing anything other than what Decisions was installed against.
Okay. Understood. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right. Any other questions for today?
Yeah, for that one, if you create another connection string to your proprietary database, you can create a query step against that, an integration query step.
I'm sorry, you kind of got cut off a little bit.
For that last question, if you create a new connection to your proprietary database, then you can, underneath that, or you can create an integration query step that uses that connection. But you do the same thing that way. We
Got
do that. Instead of a raw SQL step, it would be an integration step and just a query that uses that connection.
Okay, I think I understand what you're talking about. I'm not as familiar with those though.
Yeah, you don't do it from the toolbox. You actually do it from
Right.
folder structure.
Yeah. You're talking about like over here.
Yeah, or just even up above on the top, create data types integration.
Right.
And then database, and then add query.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. That's right. I completely forgot about that.
And then you would have previously
Yeah, and then
created
you can.
another connection to your proprietary database you could pick there.
Thank you. Yeah. So there you go.
Or you can
Alexander, there's
actually
another
create
option
it
here.
there too, create a new connection.
Yep.
Perfect.
There you go.
That's excellent. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Jeff.
Mhm.
All right. Okay. Well, we will leave it there then for the rest of the day. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to hop in on another lunch and learn, and we'll be happy to discuss. We've got Robert and Jared leading the rest of this week. Also, don't forget, if you would like, check out our solutions marketplace or the decision support YouTube channel, where training team posts various little pieces of content, as well as our lunch and learns recordings will go up there as well. Thanks for all of you that attended, those that asked questions, those that helped answer questions, and we will see you all next time.